Conceive, believe, achieve.
This is former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping.
Paddy the Baddy here. You're listening to Combat Sports UK.
And you're watching Combat Sports UK.
Welcome to episode 6 of the Octagon MMA podcast, brought to you by Combat Sports UK. I'm Lewis Glover, and I am joined by Octagon's international man of mystery, Mr. Bryan Lacey. Bryan Lacey himself. How are you doing, man?
You came in hot and heavy there, mate. That was an energetic intro. And we're in the evening here. It's 10:06 in human time. Whatever time people are listening to this, our time is 10:06. I'm spent, mate. Honestly, the days have gone where I used to be up till 2-3 in the morning, then get up, do a day's work, go back out. It's 10:06 now, and I'm thinking, can I get to 8 o'clock without wanting to go to bed? That's where this international man of mystery's true life lives.
Well, I got to say, you do come across pretty energetic on the broadcast. So here's a question for you: what's your pre-match ritual? What does Bryan do to get himself in the mood?
Good questions. So, for me, like, I don't eat much before it because I don't want to be all tired out there. But I always try and and every city I go to, Pavel Neruda is responsible for this, but every city I go to, I try and find a place that does specialty coffee. So it's brewed in a certain way. It's done even the way they pour it. It's just a cleaner cup of coffee. So I always try and find that, and I will get one of those, and that will be the pre-match. And then during the show, one of the beautiful Octagon assistants will bring us coffee on the way, which is tragically a lot worse than the one that I picked, but it gets me through. So I've tried energy drinks, but they break me. I just can't do them for, whatever make. There's only one that I can do, which is an American one called F3, because it's like natural stuff. But outside of that, the Monsters and the Red Bulls and all that, I'm just a jitter thing. So it's just a couple of little hits of coffee, and that's it. I go through it pretty much fasted, my friend, and that's the key to victory for Lacey.
You got to stay light on your feet. No big meal.
And also, you don't want to need a shit in the middle of the thing, mate. I'm trying to make it sound all glamorous. You do not want to be busting for the toilet when you're 3 hours into a 6-7 hour broadcast. It's and the toilet's back there when you got fighters, everything. It ain't pretty, mate. This the side people don't see. So I hope people aren't having their tea right now, but that is the bare truth, Lewis. That is what motivates me not to eat before a broadcast.
Plus, you just don't want to leave Luke by himself either.
No, you can't leave him on his own. He's a dangerous man on his own. You never know what he's going to do. He could make some crypto deals, or he could abscond with one of the ring girls. You got no idea what's going to happen.
So you're like his handler, his keeper.
I wish I was. He's a big boy, mate. 6 foot.
He's massive. I remember seeing him in Manchester. Mate. I was like, holy shit, that guy's a behemoth. It's not fair,
because I do the intro with him and Andre for the UK shows, and I just feel like, what did my DNA do? I love my dad. I loved him. He's a great guy, but Jesus, bad DNA, mate. Like, what's going on? You got these 6 foot legends next to you. 6 foot plus. Andre's 6'5", 6'6". Luke is a bit taller than him. And then you got this tubby little middle-aged fat guy who's trying not to have a shit during the broadcast. That's the reality of it.
Well, you'll have to get Pavel to add a little some platform shoes or a stool onto your rider for future events.
If event by event, what you need to do is keep a track,
just
take a screenshot, and watch me slowly, not just catch up, but overtake them. They'll be like, this time next year, they'll be looking up to me, and you'll have the evidence of what it is. Yeah,
brilliant. Well, let's get into it. We are here to preview.
I think that's enough. I think the people. That's it. They're quenched. They've had enough info. They've understood what the background is. This is the real stuff, mate. Forget all these fights at a football stadium. Yeah. Let's just leave it. They'll want more. That's what you need to leave.
Always leave them wanting more. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We are of course here to stack and preview an absolutely stacked Octagon 58 that features 2 title fights, one of which is probably the most anticipated rematch in European MMA history, or at least recent memory, taking place in a 20,000 seat stadium. We've got Tipsport Gamechanger matchups, marquee fights atop the welterweight division, and of course a good old fashioned grudge match. You must be absolutely itching to get over to Prague for this one.
I almost stand, but I also don't want to. You don't want to wish it away. you don't want to end up kind of, because I'm anticipating it so much there, and I'm watching the fights already. I'm doing the research. I'm already talking to some of the fighters. It is so stacked. Like when they said they were going to do a football stadium, you kind of think, how do you like the Stranitzl was so special, like that 7,000 seat arena. It was such a unique thing. Then when they let it go and it was say goodbye, like, what's next? And when they announced Eden, you think, well, how are you gonna, what sort of card you gonna bring? And when you look at this from top to bottom, it
Unreal.
is magnificent. Like, and like you see, you just had, it's got everything from, the title fights to the grudge matches to the game changer, new stars in there, legends of the sport on it as well. Czech Republic as well represented in there, so that's going to be awesome to hear those walkouts. It's beautiful, mate. It is absolutely beautiful. Have you heard the news though yet? Have you heard the news about one of the
Ooh,
fights?
breaking news. Fill me
Well,
in.
I think it's supposed to be out. So I know we record this and then you put this out. So I think today it's going to be announced. So I have heard on the grapevine that Kinsel is out, which means Vlasto Chepo is going to step in. Hello, podcast listeners. Look, I am jumping in here with a public service announcement and apology, because when me and Lewis originally recorded this part of the podcast, it was just before Kinsel was announced coming out of the fight with Peñas. Now, me alone, this guy, assumed that Chepo would be fighting Peñas for the title. So that is what me and Lewis talked about right here in this section that's supposed to be playing in your eyes and ears right now. However, as you have seen on social media, that fight is no longer happening. So to explain that, I am an idiot. I apologize. And we will get on with breaking down the rest of the card, that amazing card that goes down June the 8th in Eden, Octagon 58 now.
Another grudge match to really stoke the flames ahead of what is going to be a very intense, very intriguing, and historic main event between the current light heavyweight champion Karlos Vemola and his longtime rival Attila Vegh. And wow, this fight is this rematch 4.5 years in the making. Vega hasn't fought since then, after seemingly having all of this momentum, thinking, okay, what's going to be next for him? He's just dispatched his big rival in one round by knocking him out. And, taking in all the plaudits, the adoring crowd, the roof nearly coming off the arena. And then he just smoke bombs and disappears, and we don't see him for years. What happened? Give our listeners some insight, if you can, as to where Attila's been and why now, why he's decided at this point in time to come back and have this rematch when he's got nothing to prove.
So for people that haven't followed Octagon for that amount of time, so 2019 was what they called the match of the century. So that was Octagon 15. And it was, if you think of it in terms of MMA, it was the fight wasn't the same, but the effect it had on Octagon was, it was like Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin for the UFC. It was the fight where everybody tuned in, everybody wondered, because you had the biggest star in the Czech Republic taking on the biggest star in Slovakia. Vemola, the first ever fighter in the UFC from the Czech Republic, flown the flag all the way around, always a controversial figure. Attila Vegh, almost the polar opposite. He was the first ever Bellator champion for Slovakia. So first like real big belt to come back to Slovakia, but a totally different personality, much more relaxed and fun and kind of silly and whatever. So you had these two personalities coming together, and the question always was, who would win in that fight? And the Octagon 15 brought them together, and it didn't just bring them together. If you look at the card, you've got on that card a lot of fighters that are on this. Milos Petrosek was on that card. He lost to Joachim Christensen. You had the breakout of Apollo Silva. He was on that card as well. I've just brought it up now. Just over there. Legursky was on that card. Vojta Barboric. All these fighters that have gone from strength to strength since that card, and that is what Octagon 15 did for Octagon. It was the punch that was heard around the world. It was the event that everybody tuned in. It was the first ever event I watched of Octagon, and I watched the whole thing. It's the first time I sat down and I was like, what is this promotion? Who are they? It was the maddest crowd. And even like the security, they didn't have enough security. So the fans are really close to the fighters, and it created this mad atmosphere, which was topped by Vemola taking on, and the walkout is magic. You watch that; it's
It's
so
unreal.
intense. And now to imagine it intensified and with a bigger audience, so 10,000, in fact, 12,000 more people. 15,000 were at the first one. It will be 28,000 at the second one. So that in itself made you feel like you were part of a moment. And then what Attila Vegh did with that punch, that one punch that finished Vemola, was it changed his life, and that's why he's been away. He became a celebrity. He's been on Dancing with the Stars in Slovakia. He's got his own weird merchandise stuff. He's got a baguette named after him in the Slovakia, which is quite a famous one in garages that people call the heavyweight of baguettes, which God knows what that means, but his life changed. He's absolutely changed. He became a bigger personality. The spotlight was bigger. The stuff that comes with it. He hasn't changed, though. He is still the same guy. But Vemola has fought 12 times, 12 times at a high level. He's claimed the middleweight belt. He's claimed the light heavyweight belt. He's had grudge matches. He's had, monster fights. He's been headlining cards. He has been consistent in his performances since then. And I think the reason Attila took it is because this is the last chance. If you look at and it's sad to say the trajectory that Vemola is kind of on with the losses he's had in recent times from the Kinsel and the Kristofic, and in particular, just the way that he was finished by Kristofic. There's not going to be a much better time to fight him. There's not going to be a bigger stage, because it is the biggest stage that the Czech Republic have ever seen. And I think Attila Vegh has kind of bided his time beautifully. It's like, playing your hand at poker. I feel like he has timed it perfectly. But the question will be, what shape is he in? What will he look like? How's his training be? How's his body reacted? He's had some boxing fights. He boxed Kinsel in an exhibition. He boxed Eric Spicely in an exhibition. And again, they're not, for me, they're not real fights.
No, it's not the same.
Not the same. And the training's not the same. Even Brad Pickett, when he said to me, train for his bare knuckle fight, he said, it's great. You run and you hit the bag, you hit the pads and you spar a little bit. But with MMA, you're grappling, you're doing jiu-jitsu, you're doing wrestling, you're doing the cardio. It's a totally different thing on your body. So many questions, but I think the timing is perfect. The stage is set, and Octagon are in the next phase of where they're at. You look at the two stadiums this year, you look at Germany coming up. It's the fight before they kind of needed it. This time they don't need it, but it's great to have it. It is the perfect main event for this first time in the Eden Stadium.
Yeah, certainly it's going to be an absolute banger of matchup. What I find is interesting as well is, if I recall correctly, this fight was announced before Vemola fought Kristofic, even before that fight happened. So do you think there was any part of Vemola looking past him, and that's what sort of contributed to the result? Or do you just think getting down to middleweight at this age just doesn't suit him? He just doesn't have that durability that he once had.
It's for me, it was. I think you could line 12 fights up for Vemola and he's had it before, because he had it not last year. Was it the year before, where he had 2 or 3 fights lined up and announced before he actually had, and it was mad, all leading to Kinsel. It was leading to Kinsel. You're like, well, what if anything goes wrong? But that's the kind of way he works. That's how he motivates, and also he sells. And the last fight was at 195 catch weight, so it was in between middleweight and light heavyweight. He was trying to come back down to try and get the rematch. I'm sure that was his plan. But Kristofic is good. Kristofic hits hard. He's, experienced. So I would take nothing away from what he did. I thought Vemola's game plan was terrible for Kristofic. I think his emotions got in the way. Why he didn't just grapple him like Kinsel did and dominate him that way, I have no idea. And again, I can only think it down to the bad blood or not thinking that he's on his level. But Kristofic has proved he can knock people out. He's a heavy hitter. So that was a mistake. But the mad thing with Vemola is it doesn't matter. It's the weirdest guy. Like he could have lost 3 in a row, and we would still be as excited about this Vegh fight because of what it is, and it's unique in the fact it's the rematch from the match of the century. So I think hopefully the time away has helped Karlos Vemola, because you need it after a knockout like that. I know he's sparring at Monster. I know he's sparring at Ankos, and I know he's been, having heavy rounds. And you've got to get sensible at some point. So there'll be so many questions, and you kind of hope we get the fight of the century, if you know what I mean, rather than a 10, 12-second knockout, because that would be a shame. That would be a sad way, because it's looking like this could be Vemola's last fight. Whether it will be or not, we'll see, but he's kind of announced it as it will be. But you want him to go out and be remembered for what he was, which is a pioneer, an icon. He has done so much, not just for Czech MMA, not just for Octagon, but European MMA as well. The fights he's had, the way he promotes, the personality, everything in and around, and the way he fights. Like, people that I know that have trained with him say they don't know anyone who trains harder. Like, he turns up and he puts the work in. All the stuff that he's got, the tigers and the lions and the mansion and the fancy cars, has not stopped him putting the work in, which again, you kind of hope that whichever way this fight goes, we get a fitting fight for what could be the end of both their careers. This could be the last time we ever see Attila in the cage, and this could be the last time we see Vemola. So that's my hope.
Yeah, which just makes it all the more vital that you tune in and watch this one, because whatever happens, you know, we might get to see the careers of two legends of European MMA close on.
You might get to see a middle-aged Englishman cry. That's what you're saying, right? I am a pathetic human being. I cry at everything. But yeah, I'm excited for these two to see how it plays out.
No doubt, no doubt. You know, we can't go into every fight on the card because, as you said, it's just absolutely loaded with veterans, with up and comers, the light of Makwan and Akonne. Apollo Silva, as you mentioned, he was on Octagon 15. He takes on Amarin Gogoladze, who's looking to stamp his authority as a true contender here at a welterweight division. We've also got David Zavada on there as well. But there's
Mazouk. That's a banger. Mazouk's a scary dude.
Yeah. So you know, so many fights that we could potentially dive into, but I think it would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Jedi himself, Mr. Akonne Wanliss, after his unbelievable performance in Birmingham a few months ago. He now moves on to the next round against a very, very serious threat to the entire Tipsport Gamechanger, and that is Mr. Mateusz Legerski. This is a clash of styles. This is a clash of personalities, and this has potential to have fight of the night written all over it because of the stakes of this one.
Yeah, it's huge. Legerski as well. He, when I sort of talked to people, and even in my eyes, was kind of the potential favorite. You've always got Keita, you've always got Paradisa with the belt around his waist. But for me, Legerski is so good everywhere. Like, he's clever in the cage. His IQ in there is fantastic, makes good decisions. He's a nightmare on the ground. He's got hands and knockout power. But Akonne, it feels for me like he is rising to this occasion, and that Siraj fight, with all the emotions that came with it, kind of highlighted that for me. He was in trouble to start with, getting pushed back, and then he found that perfect left hook. And that's the thing with Akonne. He hits so hard. He hit, like, you speak to anyone at Renegade, you speak to any of his opponents, he hits different. He's better on the ground than people assume as well. He is wrestling and grappling with Fabian Edwards, Leon Edwards, some excellent grapplers at Renegade as well. So yeah, it's a clash of styles. I love both these guys. I think they're both excellent martial artists. I feel like Legerski was kind of hoping that the Siraj fight might have been a little bit more, dragged a bit more out of Akonne, taking him.
It was pretty easy.
In 47 seconds, and that's as clean as you can get out. And anybody watching that will now be aware of Akonne Wanliss, because Siraj is he's unknown in Octagon, but he's proven outside of it. And Legerski, I feel like exactly what Akonne said, would be diving for the legs. And when I spoke to Akonne said, if he wants to stand with me, I'll knock him out. And if he takes me down, I'll choke him out. So that's his prediction. And I feel like whoever wins this, because it could be Keita or Bogdanovic next, on this side of the bracket, I think they and Keita will be equal favorites to go to the finals.
Yeah, that makes sense. He certainly isn't lacking in confidence, Mr. Akonne Wanliss, and certainly that has to change the way, even in the slightest bit subconsciously, how his opponents approach him now after seeing that devastating knockout power that he has, knowing that it doesn't look like it doesn't take a big wind up, it doesn't take a haymaker. He's just got serious equalizing. He
was going backwards.
He was going backwards. That's the thing. Going backwards. Got that just God-given equalizing touch of death power that not too many people have, and That's a scary prospect for
Only me
anyone.
and Akonne have been gifted it by God, and I've retired these.
Yeah,
These
too many victims. The crown began to weigh heavy for Mr. Lacey.
Very
Right,
good.
there's one more fight that I want to talk about. This is
I don't know which one. I can't even guess which one you'd want to talk
no,
about. What
no.
other one? In fact, we're done. That's got to
We're
be
done.
it, right?
That's
There's
it.
nothing
Yeah.
else interesting to talk about that could end in a goddamn riot in Prague.
Yeah. Well, you said it, and I was fortunate to be there in person at the weigh-ins when the rumble went down in the first time in Manchester between, of course, Mr. Shamrock and Yaroslav Pokorny. And the sound that kick made when it landed, I said right away, fight's not happening. There's no way that landed so cleanly and didn't do any damage. And unfortunately, I was proven right then. But since Mr. Rock has gone on and won some fights very impressively and has continued to needle and call out Pokorny, and he finally gets to go over to his backyard against a man who wants to prove that he's the law inside the cage as well as out. And this has just got narrative and excitement written all over it.
Oh man, you've cheated that. You don't need me. That's perfect. That is perfect. That is, yeah, exactly that. And this apparently is going to be Yaroslav Pokorny's last fight as well. So he's looking to retire. And for this to be, and again, I was part of, and I won't say part of the conversations, but I was aware of conversations going on to try and make certain fights happen and to make this happen. And it felt like after Birmingham, it was set. It was kind of, I spoke to Andre and Pavel, and they were like, we should mention it and we should try and ask it in the interview. If Shem won, then to ask him that question, because we think we've got this for Eden. Then there was some issues with the weight. What weight class would it be? Because I think Yaroslav wanted it at 145 or even the 68, whereas Shem wanted to go back to 155. He didn't want to stay at 68 for this. So I was in Frankfurt, and the last words I had with Mr. Scott Langdon, the fucking can't remember, were, as we left, he went, "Do you think the Shem fight's on? Because it still hasn't been announced." And I was like, "Let it go, mate. Let it go. It's not going to happen. They'll always find a reason for it not to happen." I turned my phone off. I fell asleep for 10 minutes in the taxi. I woke up, and Scott sent me a message with literally the graphic on it. I was like, what the heck? But it's here, it's happening. I feel like it will be the atmosphere, an atmosphere unlike any other that is in Octagon, because I think that the fans of the Czech Republic will be so behind Yaroslav Pokorny. I think Shamrock is hated is not the right word. I feel like there's such a they're so behind Pokorny that they are going to let it be known, and they have followed this journey. And again, we don't know exactly what we've kind of followed the narrative from the Shamrock side and the UK media side and what's been going out there. But to see when the fights get announced, or even when I announce I'm interviewing Shem or anything like that, the amount of Czech fans that drop into the comments, it is, I've never had it with any other fighter. I've had lots of controversial people as far as interactions with, or even posts or collabed with, or whatever else. I have never seen the swell of, first of all, support for Pokorny, but also that energy for wanting to see Shamrock lose. And I think Shem's going to love it. I think Shem is going to absolutely thrive in that energy. But you don't want, I feel like we've got another twist to happen in this yet. I don't want to say it. I don't want to curse it, but we got to get through the weigh-ins. But then I also think we got to get through Shem being in the same city, Shem being in the same hotel potentially, or maybe even close.
Got to keep them separate.
Not even just them.
Andre and Pavel, we got to keep them completely sequestered.
Keep them separate, wrapped in cotton wool.
Weigh in at different times from each other. It doesn't matter. We don't need a face off. We don't need to build this up. Just keep them separate. Got it. Treat them like they're on two separate juries, completely sequestered from the world.
Did you see that KSW walkout where they had that guy in like the fridge or the casket? We need them both in one of them. We need to go one up from KSW. We need to lock them into that as soon as they arrive in Prague. Put them in that, feed them through whatever we need to, or whatever, give them enough space to move around, and then open it up actually inside the cage. But I feel like it's a great fight for both these guys. I feel it's a tough one for Pokorny. I think it's very difficult to deal with Shem and his size and his skill set. But I think, having the crowd behind him, having that 12th man, as you would say in football, I think it's gonna. I can't even imagine what that energy is going to feel like, and I think it will play a part. But it will either boost Shem to the greatest performance we've ever seen, or vice versa. It could elevate Yaroslav Pokorny to do something special.
Absolutely. I think this is going to be an atmosphere like neither of these men have ever fought in before. And as you said, anything can happen. We probably, we have an idea in our minds of how it's going to play out, especially just based off of let's say, recent form. But it takes one shot. It takes one misstep with all of that pressure, with all of that support, with all of that hatred. You just don't know what it's going to do to you mentally and physically once you step inside there. But as you said, there's a lot of people there who want to see Shem lose. And if he does win, they're going to continue to tune in to his fights in the hope that they will see him lose at some point in the future. So, and if he wins, it will cement him as one of the biggest stars in Octagon, no doubt about it.
Yeah, not just in the UK then. Not just in the UK. You do that on that stage and you put a performance in like you did against Katakoli. And that solidifies it. But I think there's another twist at least to come in that fight. I just don't see it being a smooth journey to them getting in the cage. But I pray that it is.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, Bryan, this has been absolutely fantastic as always. And actually, there's one more that we've got to mention because there's many, many fights, but it would be remiss of me to not mention the Pink Panther himself. Since this fight is happening in the Czech Republic, one of the biggest stars in Czech MMA, David Kozma taking on Jon Serdu in, again, a very big clash of styles, but Kozma is going to have almost every single person in the arena on his side. He is going to drink in that support and just, one of the coolest cats in all of MMA. And this is going to be a real interesting one because Serdu is violent and dangerous, and he loves to go and upset a party if he can. So as we saw him do in Manchester. So yeah, that one's going to be brilliant as well.
Serdu spoke to me this week and he said he loves the fact that he reckons 95% of people will be cheering for Kozma. He respects Kozma, but he just thinks he's got too much for him. And, when you see the different styles, Serdu's a fast starter and Kozma is notoriously slow. 5 rounds have benefited him on a number of occasions. You think about the Apollo fight. Even if that Kike Brito fight had gone one more round, you'd have probably backed Kozma to finish it at some point. But this is 3 rounds. It is one of the best walkouts in MMA. Coming out to Baywatch, coming out with all the pink gear on. It's beautiful to see the relationship he's got with the fans and how far he's come from a kid that was bullied with a stammer to now somebody who does a lot for kids and for charities around bullying. A face of what is possible if you believe in yourself, the work you put in, and then you can fight like a dog as well. So that welterweight contest, along with the silver Gogoladze, that's almost like a pyramid in itself.
Yes,
to see who will fight for the title. So much at stake with that. But it's again, for us to go through all these fights, and every time you mention a card, I have to take a deep breath. I have to take a deep breath because they're happening. They're happening June the 8th in Prague at the Eden Stadium in front of 28,000 people. What a life, mate. What a life.
Yeah. So I certainly, if you fancy a little jaunt over to Prague, I mean, I heard the beer's pretty good there. I heard the women are quite attractive there. And I heard they know how to put on some good...
I'm bringing my wife. I need to bring one beautiful woman with me and that'll do. That's it.
Well said. And I heard they know how to put on some pretty good fights as well. So
we've seen a few.
There's still a few tickets left. Certainly worth a look at a potential trip over to Prague in a few weeks' time. But if not, if you are tuning in from the UK, then Channel 4 player or on Octagon.tv for everyone else.
Not Channel 4 anymore. I'm sorry. No more Channel 4. So I that's
misspoke.
Been taken off. No, it's all good. It's all good. Again, just looking at the platform and what we were getting as far as exposure and stuff, it just wasn't working. It was definitely having an effect on pay-per-view sales on another territory. So we will be on DAZN. We'll be on Octagon.tv and watch this space because we should have some new announcements about different broadcast partners coming up at some point soon. But yeah, there you go.
Excellent. Well, there you go.
Plenty of
You heard-
exclusives for you here, mate.
Plenty of
Look at
exclusives.
this.
Yeah, exactly. It's just laying it all down. Love it. And that's why I always enjoy doing these podcasts with you, Bryan. You're always gracious with your time. So thank you very much. And have a great time over in Prague. I'm very jealous that you get to be there, but hopefully we'll link up at an event soon and enjoy some of this beautiful violence in person together.
Sounds good, brother. Sounds good. All right, take care. Cheers.
Take care. Bye.